Suppose if I go with .NET Programming, then I no need to write my own tools. By using operator overloading concept, I'm going to change the meaning of existing operator. I want to access the data which is stored in the database. For that, I'm going to use Ado.NET. Hello to all, a warm welcome to introductory session on .NET Programming. I am Revati from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So dear student, this is the right time to opt .NET Programming, and I will tell you why this is the right time to study this subject. Anyway, dear student, you have project and it carries 200 marks. That means this 200 marks is further divided into internal as well as external. That means you have 100 marks for internal as well as 100 marks for external. Now, you have to create and develop your own project. To develop and implement your own project, you require programming language, and you can able to use any high-level programming languages like Java, .NET, Python, Android, etc. But this is the right time as well as right platform to opt as well as study this subject. Anyway, dear student, let's see the agenda of today's session. At the beginning, I'm going to have prerequisites. After that, I'm going to have learning outcome. Along with that, I'm going to have units as well as internals pattern as well as final exam question paper pattern. So dear student, let's see the prerequisites at the beginning. So dear student, to study this subject, you does not require any pre-requirement, because without any programming knowledge, you can able to learn as well as study this subject. So this is the example for high level programming language. So dear student, without any programming language support or knowledge, you can able to study this .NET, because I'm going to start from the scratch. And one more advantage here, that if we have little bit knowledge about any programming language like C or C++ or Java, then also you can able to study this subject very easily. So with the knowledge of programming language, you can able to study this subject, or without the knowledge of programming language, you can able to study this subject, because I'm going to start from the scratch. That means I'm going to start from the frameworks, evolutions, history. Along with that, I'm going to start with the data types, literals, constants, all those things we are going to study. So I'm going to start from the scratch. So to study this subject, you does not require any special knowledge. Now, what are the learning outcome? That means if I study this subject, then what I'm going to get or what I'm going to gain. So dear student, it is very helpful to understand the Microsoft .NET framework. So this .NET is the product of Microsoft. So once I started studying this .NET programming, then I can able to understand Microsoft .NET framework. Along with that, I can able to understand ASP. So what is this ASP? That is nothing but Active Server Page.NET. Now, it is also useful to design web applications. That means, as I discussed at the beginning itself, this is the right time to study this subject because I can able to use this programming language in my project. So, to develop my own project, I can use .NET programming. Then what kind of projects I can able to develop? That is web applications or website or standalone applications, etc. So it helps to design web applications with variety of controls. So using .NET framework, I can able to design as well as develop web applications. It allows the user to access the data using inbuilt data access tool. So dear student, suppose if I go with .NET programming, then I no need to write my own tools. I can able to make use of inbuilt tools for accessing data. Now, I can able to use Microsoft ADO.NET to access data in the web application. Now tell me why I required ADO.NET. So dear student, now tell me why I'm going to use ADO.NET. Let me to consider the example here that I'm going to fill some online application. And if I consider online application, I have some forms and I'm going to feed the data. So this is my front end. Whatever the data I'm going to feed, that must be stored in somewhere, and where it is going to store in some database, and that is nothing but the back end. Now, if I go with .NET programming, then with the help of ADO.NET, I can able to establish the connection between front end as well as back end. And it is very easy to configure and deploy web application. That means by using .NET programming, it is very easy to configure the web applications as well as it is very easy to host the web application. And it is mainly used to develop secure web application. Now tell me why I'm going to use .NET programming. It is mainly used to develop website as well as web applications. Now tell me what is the advantage of .NET programming here, that we are going to get all built-in tools. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use all those built-in tools in my program or in my application. So these are the some of the learning outcome of this subject. Now let's see the different units comes under this subject. So dear student, if I consider .NET programming, under this subject, I'm going to get 4 units. Now, let me to consider first unit. So, in the first unit, I'm going to get the introduction about .NET programming. Along with that, I'm going to get some of the information about .NET programming. Under this, I'm going to have overview of OOPS. So what is this OOPS? Here OOPS is nothing but object-oriented programming. Now, this .NET programming is also an example for object-oriented programming. Along with that, I'm going to have introduction to C hash. So dear student, just remember here, if I say .NET or C hash, both are same. That means I can able to use .NET programming or I can able to use the word C hash programming. So here I'm going to deal with the characteristics as well as applications of C hash programming. Along with that, I'm going to deal with the difference between C as well as C hash. Then I'm going to deal with the .NET strategy. Along with that, I'm going to deal with the origin of .NET programming. Along with that, I'm going to deal with .NET framework. Along with that, I'm going to deal with the benefits of .NET framework or .NET approach. These are the certain topics comes under Unit 1. Now, if I consider Unit 2, under Unit 2, I have 3 chapters. That is inheritance and polymorphism. Along with that, I have interface. Along with that, I have operator overloading. So dear student, under Unit 2, I'm going to study what is inheritance. So inheritance means what? Let me to consider the simple example here. I have A and I have B. Now, A will have some property. Okay, now this B can able to access these property, that is called inheritance or reusability. For example, if I consider A is nothing but parent and here B is nothing but son. Now A have some house. This same house can be owned by the son. So it is nothing but the acquiring the property. That means son can able to acquire the properties of their parents. So that is known as inheritance. And if I consider polymorphism. So what is this polymorphism? Poly means what? Many. And what is morphism? That is nothing but form. So it is nothing but many form. For example, if I consider myself, I can able to handle different subject. For example, if I consider this academic year, I'm the faculty and I'm going to handle .NET programming. Along with that, I'm going to handle networking. Along with that, I'm going to handle Java. Along with that, I'm going to handle NAS. So dear student, here one person is going to handle many subjects. So polymorphism, that means one person can able to handle different subject. So that is known as polymorphism. So these concepts are we are going to study under Unit 2. Along with that, I'm having interface. So what is this interface? if I consider .NET programming, here this does not support multiple inheritance. To support multiple inheritance, I'm going to have the concept called interface. Along with that, I'm going to have operator overloading. So what is this operator overloading? Overloading operator, that means I'm going to change the meaning of the operator. By using operator overloading concept, I'm going to change the meaning of existing operator. So all these topics we are going to discuss under unit 2. Further, I'm going to have unit 3. So dear student, under unit 3, once again, I have 2 chapters, that is delegates and events. Along with that, I have managing errors and exception. Now tell me, what is delegates? In general, what is the meaning of delegate? That is nothing but guest. Now, under this subject, we are going to study delegates. So here, delegates are nothing but the guest. Instead of that, it is nothing but the function pointer. So dear student, anyway, all are familiar with the word pointer. So what is the meaning of this word pointer? That is nothing but it holds the address of another variable. So it holds the address of another variable. But in .NET, delegates are nothing but the function pointer. How I can able to manage the function pointer? How I can able to use the function pointer in my program? How to declare delegates? How to use delegate methods? How to create delegates? How to invoke delegates? All those things we are going to study under first chapter, that is delegates and events. Now, if I consider second chapter, here I have managing errors as well as exceptions. So, we all are familiar with the word errors. That means if I consider programming language, errors may occur at any stage. Now, I want to manage the error as well as I want to handle the errors properly. For that, I'm having exception. So, I can able to manage the exception. So, here I have different types of errors as well as exceptions. Anyway, dear student, we are going to study all the things in depth during my concept class. But at present, you just remember that these are the certain topics comes under unit 3. Now, if I go with unit 4, I have introducing Windows form. Along with that, I have data access with Adobe.NET. So these are the 2 chapters comes under unit 4. Now dear student, if I want to create my own form, I can able to use .NET, because in .NET I'm going to get many inbuilt tools. By using all those inbuilt tools, I can able to design my own form. When I say it is form, what are the things I can able to include in my form? That is text box, label, button, radio button, checkbox, Okay, these are the things I can able to include in my form. And in this chapter, we are going to study how can I include text box or labels or buttons or radio buttons or checkbox. How can I make use all those things effectively? All those things we are going to study under Unit 4. Along with that, we are going to study how to access the data which is stored at the back end, and how to establish the connection between front and back end. All those things we are going to study under second chapter, that is data access with Ado.NET. So here, if I consider this form, for example, say here I have text box. I have written AAA. Now, when I submit this form, this data is stored in the database. Now, I want to access the data which is stored in the database. For that, I'm going to use Ado.NET. That means how the connections are established between front end as well as back end, and how to retrieve the data which is stored in the back end. All those things we are going to study under Unit 4. Now, let me to explain the internal pattern. So, dear student, you have 3 internals for this subject, and each internal carries 20 marks. And for your first internals, you have to study first unit as well as second unit. For the second internals, it is third unit and fourth unit. And for your third internals, you have to study Unit 2 and Unit 4. And while finalizing your marks, I am going to consider the average of 3 internal marks. Now, let me to explain the question paper pattern. Dear student, this is 80 marks paper. 80 marks paper, and this complete question paper is divided into 2 parts, that is part A and part B. Under part A, you will get 12 questions. Out of 12 questions, you want to answer only 10 questions, and each question carries 2 marks. Now, if I consider part B, you have 4 main questions. You have 4 main questions. For example, say 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if I consider first main question, here I have A, B, or C and D. Now, dear student, you have to answer any one question. That means from first question, either you want to answer A, B, or you want to answer C, D. And each question carries 50 marks. That means that is further divided into 7 plus 8. And if I consider second main question, once again I have A, B, C, D. I have OR option. That means I want to attend either A, B or C, D. And if I consider third main question, same format. And if I go with fourth main question, same format. So it is 20 plus 60, total 80 mark paper. And to get full marks in this subject, it is very easy. Dear student, I suggest you to study any 3 units properly. to get clear this subject. So dear student, to clear this subject, it is very easy because here we are going to study only basics about this subject. Now, which textbooks you have to refer? That is, you have to refer Profession C Hash by Carly Watson. This is the textbooks which is prescribed by the Mysore University. And dear student, no need to buy this textbooks because I'm going to provide all the study materials which is related to the units. So, no need to buy this textbooks. So, dear student, let's meet in the next session with the concept, that is with the introduction about .NET. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.